Hello, everybody. So we've had an interesting past week. The preferreds of MicroStrategy, STRK and STRF, were trading at around 105 this morning. They both crossed the 105 mark. It's up from last week where they were at 103. The market is slowly realizing something is going on with the preferred, slowly realizing that the preferred may actually be undervalued. What makes this week particularly interesting, more than the fact that it's a baby buy, it's a small buy, only $75 million, only 700 Bitcoin, small buy. This adds to the volatility of the stock in my view. He remains unpredictable. Saylor remains unpredictable. What's more interesting to me is the fact that there was no common ATM today, and I'm going to get a lot of people in the comment section probably very happy that the ATM seems to have stopped this past week. There was no common ATM whatsoever, but there was the largest week. If you combine both ATMs for the preferred, these were the largest week for raising money via the preferred at 36 million for STRK and 38 million for STRF. He's going strong with STRF. He's gonna run out because he only had 2 billion allowed here. So if he keeps going that's gonna run out really quickly. He's going stronger with STRF than I was anticipating. Anyways, what's very important in my view is to realize that we now have a Saylor who's ATMing on stocks like STRK or STRF, which are technically overvalued because they're issued at par. $100 is the par. This is the money that you're technically lending to MicroStrategy is $100, but they cost 104. So the $4, the $5, well, but that delta, who captures that delta? Who gets to pay for the privilege of owning the shares? Well, this is where this gets interesting. Did you calculate that? Did you do a calculation? Let's calculate this because this is going to be pretty interesting. So last week, of course, the STRK ATM Saylor issued 353,511 STRK, and at $100 par, that should be $35.35 million in proceeds. Simple, right? You multiply the number of shares times $100 par. But what were the proceeds? The proceeds were $36.2 million. So he issued these $100 debts, right? These IOUs, these $100 IOUs. He sold these $100 IOUs, these $100 bills, to make it simple. He sold them for $102.40. And as Grok predicted, who gets to earn that premium? He did. Because look, that's 36.2 million coming in. Well, while you actually issued only 35.35 million, you had 36.2 million coming in. So the gain above par was 0.85 million, which he put straight into Bitcoin. So he cashed out the price to par premium. This stock trades at a price to par premium of 1.0240. So the 0.0240, you get it, the extra here, that went straight into gain. And that's just a pure gain. And that gain goes towards Bitcoin. And so that's $102.40 right now. This is trading at about 105. So right now it's about 5% extra above par that you earn. What's going to happen if and when those shares, those preferreds, trade at 180 or 160, which is what I think they eventually will trade at? Well, that's going to be a major gain in the form of issuing STRK and STRF for MicroStrategy. Do the same calculation for STRF. When you look at STRF, you take the number of shares, you multiply it times 100. That should have been 37.49 million, but look, he raised 38.4 million, so that means that he cashed out 0.0241 extra. That goes towards a profit. It's a profit. They're trading at a price to par premium of a 1.02. They're right now trading at a price to par premium of a 1.05. So I hope he's ATMing on those right now. And so the gain on STRF was $910,000, right? 0.91 million. Of course, right now it all looks very small, but we gotta look towards the future. What if we get to a stage a year from now where across both of these it does $1 billion in ATM, and maybe they trade at 150 instead of 100? Then all of a sudden that's a $500 million gain, maybe every week. This is the insanity of this. This is really good stuff. And this is what I think. This was my video from yesterday. I think the preferreds are very, very much undervalued because right now, as he showed in the Q1 call, the preferreds are trading at a credit spread of a triple C, which the credit spread is actually worse than a triple C. They're trading at at 600 basis points, 700 basis points for the Strife and the Strike preferred, while really he believes they should be trading closer to a double A or an A or a triple A because the Strike and Strife is 6 times over collateralized, right? And if you look at double A or triple A debt, they're typically 2 to 3 times over collateralized. So this is nearly 2 to 3 times better than your typical double A rated bond, but it's still trading at a triple C credit spread. And so in order for as the market notices the quality of these preferreds going up, as the market notices the quality, they should really trade more. I think between 160 and 200. It's tough to come up with a range, but we should have instruments that should be yielding closer to say between 5 and 6%, and they shouldn't be yielding 10%. They should be yielding maybe between 4 and 6%. And so the only way to do that is to get the price of the preferreds up. And so that's what Saylor is advocating. And I think this is pretty genius. I think this is actually working. The market is realizing that these instruments are undervalued because not only you get a 10% yield, say with Strife, but look at Strife, it's almost 6 times over collateralized, right? The money was not borrowed to invest in some, frivolous business venture for a failing business. No, the money was borrowed to buy Bitcoin. It's a Bitcoin-backed instrument. Oh, it's really good. Anyways, let me continue. Let's look at the trend, right? The Strike ATM trend. And so it's still a trend, right? Maybe someone on Twitter will be like saying, oh, look, it's going down. See, it's going down. Well, you got to zoom out. If I zoom out, June 2nd ATM for Strike was way down compared to May 26. But if you were to draw a line here in the middle, you clearly have a trend in the Strike ATM, and perhaps not enough to have a trend on Strife. This is what Strife looks like. We went from 10.4 million last week to 38 million being announced this week. A Strife is off to a pretty darn strong start. In fact, it's off to a start just about as strong as we had for the Strike ATM. Right now, all I can tell you is the Strife ATM launch is doing just as well as the Strike ATM launch, which is a little more concerning for Strife because Strife only has 2 billion approved ATM. Strike has a 20 billion approved ATM. So maybe Saylor should have upped that. Maybe he should have done a 21 billion ATM for Strife. But maybe he didn't want to spook the market. I don't know. He's unpredictable. That's what keeps the stock volatile. The unpredictability of Saylor keeps the stock volatile. I want him to stay unpredictable. I want to be able to continue to not be able to predict week after week because that adds volatility. The moment we can predict, the volatility is going to be gone and the price to NAV is going to be lower than what we're at right now. Price to NAV right now, 1.77. We've recovered a little bit. So he's let the ATM breathe a little, and of course the price to NAV recovers. And my hope is that he keeps doing the ATM. I love the ATM. I don't have any single problem with the ATM. I think it's great. I think you should ATM every day, but that's because I'm a long-term holder. There's people who hold MicroStrategy more for the short run. There's a lot of traders, etc., and they get very loud on the internet, right? They get loud on Twitter, and so Saylor, being very connected to Twitter, is like, okay, well, maybe I'm gonna let it breathe a little bit, but I hope he starts again the ATM because that's how you earn so much yield. You see, 1.77 on the command. on the common shares. That's 0.77. That's your gain right now. As I'm telling you, the price to par is a 1.05 on Strike on Stripe. So you're still earning a profit, a straight profit. It's pretty darn outstanding, but not as much as you are earning a profit on the common. So I hope he does the common. I think it's also very possible, and I conclude with that, it's also very possible that they didn't do the ATM because, I mean, he was busy last week. He was at some, in my view, that was a fairly disappointing conference, in my view, but you don't have to agree with me on that. But he was just busy at some conference instead of printing $100 bills and selling them for $177. He was at a conference, and so sometimes you have to give back to the community. He actually did. Saylor did an amazing speech, the 21 Ways to Wealth speech. That was an amazing speech. I highly recommend it. Some of the other announcements at the Bitcoin conference, in my view, were fairly disappointing and, lacked the grandeur that I think a lot of us were expecting. Price pNAV is recovering. I hope it keeps recovering so we can ATM once more and earn that BTC yield once more. Anyways, this was not investment advice, not financial advice. This is only entertainment. I hope you were entertained. Please like, please subscribe, follow me on Patreon, follow me on X. Thank you for watching and have a wonderful, wonderful day.